or the division administrator.
Okay. And what reaction, if any, did you have to being informed of that?
I can't say I had a reaction.
Okay. Did you have any conversations with anybody after that about that subject?
Well, along the way, I was getting status updates and we were talking about the whole entire entity of the employees that were being investigated. So it's hard to say what discussions I had and when and with who.
Great. Let's just focus first on, did you ever discuss Sue Novak's discipline with Magda Fesahai?
I was aware, yes, I would have talked about the fact she was under investigation. I also was made aware that she resigned during the pre-disciplinary or at the end of the pre-disciplinary meeting. So in that way, yes, I would have talked to Magda.
Okay, and what was your awareness of how she was put under investigation?
I don't know what you mean.
Well, so somebody just came to you and said the warden of Columbia is under investigation, and that was the end of the conversation, or something else?
I was aware they were being placed out. She and a couple other people were being placed out on administrative leave. And I was aware that they were being placed under investigation. So yeah, it's about that simple.
Okay. So how about the pre-disciplinary letter for Sue Novak? Did you have any knowledge of that?
Her pre-disciplinary interview, is that what you're asking?
No, the notice letter.
I would not have seen the notice letter until afterwards.
Okay. So HR doesn't help review the notice letter?
Yes, we do, but we have template letters, to be quite honest, but I don't see everyone myself. It's impossible.
Okay. And it's possible that this warden one, let's just be clear, how long have you been HR for the Department of Corrections throughout your entire career?
Throughout my entire career, I've been almost 12 years in this role, and then I also worked for the Department of Corrections in the late 90s, early 2000s as both an HR specialist and then also as an institution HR director at Prairie du Chien Correctional.
Okay, so it's fair to say you've got an extensive experience, huh?
Yes.
Okay, so in that experience, how many times have you known a warden to be investigated?
Oh, I don't have an exact number. Probably a handful.
Okay, so somewhere around 5?
I'd say between maybe 5 and 10 if I had to guess, but I don't have the exact number.
And how about discipline?
I don't have the exact number, but we've definitely disciplined. I probably 5 or so, or less than that, maybe. During my 12 years.
Less than 5 or less?
Probably during my 12 years.
Okay. So it's fair to say that the investigation of Sue Novak was unusual, correct?
No, I wouldn't say that.
Okay. Sue, why not?
I don't think ever an investigation is unusual. If we need to investigate, we investigate whatever person, no matter what the level.
Okay, but you'll agree that the DOC infrequently investigates, let me put that another way. For whatever reason, during your tenure, there have been few investigations of wardens, right?
There have not been that many investigations. Correct.
Okay.
There have been some.
Now, let's just compare that number with deputy wardens. How many deputy wardens have been terminated in your career, if you can recall?
Terminated?
Mm-hmm.
I'd have to be guessing. I can only think of the one right now. I don't know. I don't know. I would be guessing.
Okay, and based on your knowledge and training, the warden is a categorically different position than a deputy warden, right?
They are in the same pay range, but in the hierarchy, the warden is higher than a deputy warden.
Okay, but a warden is also different in other ways than just being higher than a deputy warden, right?
What do you mean? In terms
Well,
of
for example,
duties?
statutory
Yes.
authority. How much statutory authority does a deputy warden have?
I see what you're saying. So a warden, yes, they are the appointing authority for their institution. They get
Oh,
sworn in, other things that a deputy wouldn't unless we have to give appointing authority status because a warden is absent.
okay. So it's fair to say that a deputy warden and a warden have pay grades, but otherwise their jobs are categorically different, right?
They have different duties and different responsibilities. They are both career execs, so same similar expectations in terms of being the top levels, but a warden is higher in that hierarchy.
Categorically so, right?
Um, yes, they are higher in that hierarchy.
Okay. Now, you gave us some numbers about women at leadership positions at the department. You remember that?
I talked about warden positions and then was asked one question about an administrator, yes.
Great. How many female wardens are you aware of at the Department of Corrections at a maximum security institution?
I believe it was Kathy Jess at Dodge Correctional and then Sue at Columbia Correctional.
Okay, and that was Miss Just. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. She was employed there before your time, right?
Before my time, yes.
Right. You
In
had
this
no
role.
personal knowledge of that, right?
What was that?
You had no personal knowledge of her employment, right?
Well, I do because we have it, I have access to the personnel records, and so I can see that she was a warden from 2004 to 2008
And
approximately.
only because Mr. Mullenbach asked you, right?
He did ask me to research that, yes.
Okay, so you didn't know that before you went and researched it, right?
Oh, I probably did. Kathy Just was the secretary of the department, and we know her history quite well.
Then why'd you go research it?
Because I needed to confirm and look at the dates, and I was asked to confirm.
Okay. So based on you're aware, aren't you, that a maximum security prison is categorically different than a medium security prison, right?
They definitely have different challenges, yes.
Okay. Besides being different, is there anything else you can say about their challenges?
I mean, it's a different clientele. Oftentimes, they may have different structures depending on which one they're at. So our persons in our care are categorized by their risk level, and maximum security facilities are the highest risk.
Okay. Now, do you know what gross misconduct is?
Yes.
What is that?
So there's gross misconduct in terms of allowing for COBRA benefits. That's what gross misconduct is. And then there's also the serious acts of misconduct, which I don't know if that's what you mean, but the serious
Thank
act
you.
of misconduct is our disciplinary process and in statute.
I appreciate that. Okay. So there's a statutory basis for what a serious act of misconduct is. Is that right?
Most of them, 9 of them are in statute, and then each department can identify if there are additional department-specific things that might rise to the level of a serious act. So we do have some things outlined in Executive Directive 2 that are in addition to the statutory provisions.
Okay. Now, let me just to back up 1 second. Dodge Correctional DCI, that's an intake facility, isn't it?
It is.
Okay, so that's categorically different than a maximum security facility, right?
It is categorized as a maximum security facility, but they do have the intake personnel or the intake area, which is different than others that don't have intake.
Okay. Now, do you know about the location of the fences at Columbia Correctional Facility?
I am not, I have visited there, but I am not a person to ask about fences.
Okay, but reading the disciplinary interviews and the packets for the terminated employees, did you become aware of the issue with the fence?
I did. I read a
Okay.
lot about fences and locations, yes.
Did you know anything about that fence prior to that occasion?
Did I know anything about the fencing at CCI prior to reading the packet?
Thank you. Yeah.
No.
No. Okay. Did you assist in the drafting of the termination letters from Mr. Gusky?
I don't recall.
Okay, how about Mr. Weber?
Yeah, I don't recall my involvement on that.
Okay, is that something that you normally are involved with?
Not me directly, but the employment relations staff, they have to review every letter, every disciplinary letter, every letter of expectation. So probably Kelly Brown would have been reviewing that.
Okay, so if there's a statement of fact in a disciplinary letter, that would have been reviewed by HR, is that right?
Our employment relations area, yes.
Okay. Employment relations, is that HR or something else?
It's a section within my HR bureau.
Okay, thank you for that. Now, did you have any conversations with Secretary Carr about Sue Novak's discipline or investigation, I should say?
Not directly with him that I recall. I mean, I knew she was being investigated again, but we wouldn't have talked about it because there's no decision making. So that's when I usually get involved.
Okay, did you talk to anybody in his office?
I would have had conversations with the deputy, most likely, possibly Secretary Carr about the entire group of investigations, but I don't recall exactly what. It's more, like I said, status updates and things like that.
Okay. Now you read Miss Novak's disciplinary interview. You said after she resigned. Is that accurate?
Her pre-disciplinary interview
Yeah.
notes, I read the notes. Yes, it would have been after.
Okay. And do you recall if she made any allegations of sex discrimination in that letter?
I believe during that interview process, she did discuss that.
Okay. And she was an active employee at that time, right?
Until the end of that, yeah, when she resigned or retired.
Okay. So then the department would have had I guess let me ask that another way. What would have been, at the time she made those complaints, what would have been the department's duty to investigate those complaints?
Well, we would have looked to see if there was merit to what was being alleged. I don't know. I don't know if I understand the question.
Well, did you investigate?
Her pre-disciplinary notice was, or interview was reviewed. I don't know what you mean by investigate.
Well, did you investigate Secretary Carr for sex discrimination against Sue Novak?
No,
Why not?
because Ms. Novak's assertion was because she was a woman and being investigated, that somehow that was inappropriate. And that was just not the case.
Oh, and how did you determine that?
The department has the right to investigate whomever they need to if there is a belief that there might have been a work rule violation. That can get somebody cleared of that assumption, or it can make us take certain personnel action.
Okay, so how did you know that Secretary Carr wasn't discriminating against Sue Novak on the basis of sex?
There was no evidence to suggest that.
And you knew that because you investigated or something else?
No, I don't know. I didn't investigate. I read it after the fact, and I'm not aware that the department investigated anything at the time. When I read it, I did not feel that there was merit to those claims because it was about being investigated.
Did you discuss them with Secretary Carr at any time?
I don't recall that I did.
Okay, so you learned of this complaint, you didn't investigate, and you didn't report it to the secretary. Isn't that true?
Well, there was
Object
not.
to the term complaint.
Well, let's be clear. You know that under the policy that their statements in this in her pre-disciplinary hearing were sufficient to trigger a complaint of sex discrimination, right?
You're asking me if I believe that there was enough to trigger an investigation?
No, I'm absolutely not asking that.
What are you asking me?
Great. We'll go over this really clearly. I'm asking you, based on your knowledge and experience as an HR professional of the policy regarding complaints, whether or not Sue Novak's statements that she was being discriminated against and investigated unfairly on the basis of sex in her pre-disciplinary statement was enough to trigger the sexual discrimination policy.
In my experience and knowing my position, I do not believe her statements in a response to a pre-disciplinary investigation was a complaint, a formal complaint.
And
I
why not?
also do not believe that it had merit when I read it later to show that because she was a woman, she should not have been investigated.
Okay, and that's after you didn't investigate, right?
We did not do a formal investigation.
And that's after you didn't speak to Secretary Carr, right?
I don't recall if I spoke to Secretary Carr. I spoke to him about a lot of things.
Okay. So again, let's just be clear. What more, let's put it in that sense. What more could Sue Novak have done other than say that she was being discriminated against on the basis of sex by being unfairly investigated by Secretary Carr?
She could have put in a
Trigger
formal
the
complaint,
policy.
which she has through the ERD process.
Okay, and does the policy, based on your knowledge and the procedure of the policy, she was required to fill out a form, is that right?
We do have a respectful workplace complaint form, and that's usually how we then do our intakes.
Okay, is that mandatory or something else?
I'd have to look at the policy. I don't know that. Oftentimes, if somebody asks for an intake, we can just do an intake and talk with that person.
Okay, so again, it's your testimony here based on 12 years of knowledge and experience at HR, at the Department of Corrections, that you do not are aware of what is sufficient to file a discrimination complaint internally at the Department of Corrections. Is that right?
I'm going to object. It's a mischaracterization of the testimony.
She can answer the question one way or the other. That's not you. We've tried this so many times, Mr. Mullenbach.
Okay.
What you're
let's
doing here
just
is-
Stop. Okay, do you understand the question, Ms. Beier, and can you answer it?
I understand under ED5, we have a complaint process that somebody can file a discrimination complaint either locally with the Office of Diversity and Employee Services or with the ERD if they choose to go outside of the department. I
Okay.
also understand that someone speaking during a pre-disciplinary hearing doesn't necessarily mean that there is a complaint that is filed.
Okay. Are you, if somebody can make a complaint to you about sex discrimination?
They could.
Okay, and what duty would you have if you learn about somebody making a complaint to you about sex discrimination?
I would ask my Office of Diversity and Employee Services to get in touch with that person.
And did you do that for Sue Novak?
No.
No. Okay. Three minutes, please, Judge. I think we're almost done.